Hello and welcome to the vlog. It is another absolutely glorious, beautiful, sunny day here. That is the third sunny day in a row in mid-February. Most unexpected, especially after the recent weather, but absolutely glorious. It's not hugely warm, but it's certainly not cold. There was a frost this morning and the sun is now out. It's just fantastic. And I thought what I'd do in this vlog, perhaps for the benefit of my overseas viewers in places where they don't really have canals or narrowboats, or for home viewers who haven't got a narrowboat but are perhaps thinking of them, I thought I'd do a wander around the marina, just looking at some of the different types of boat and the different features you can get, because although they are all largely very much the same, they are also in very many ways very different.
First of all, here's a general look across all the boats moored at this marina. Being narrowboats, they have one definite shared characteristic, namely that they're 6 feet 10 inches wide. Yes, you can get wider ones, but they're not narrowboats, they're wide beams, and you can't travel as widely with them. Lengths vary from 20 to 30 feet up to about 70 feet. The stern, bows and hull designs are all slightly different. And the way that people accessorise and fit out their craft depend on personal taste, as well as whether it's a weekend boat or a floating home. Let's start at the back with a traditional or trad stern. It's short, barely enough room to stand on, and just the tiller, maybe some so-called taff seats, and a hatch to get to the propeller in case it gets fouled. You can also see here the diesel filler cap and a back rope fender. You're not actually supposed to sit on those seats when steering, by the way, in case the rudder catches something, kicks sideways and takes you off into the water. Rather, you stand forward of it, where the hatch is, having obviously opened the hatch first. If the tiller looks short here, that's because you generally stash the handle part inside the boat until you actually want to go anywhere. Next, the semi-trad, where the back end of the boat has panels that make it look like a trad from the side, but in fact open out to a cockpit area, usually with some seating or storage. The engine is underneath those deck plates, and the controls nicely visible from the captain's position. That lever on the bottom left is the throttle and gear stick. Finally, we have the cruiser stern, which is for party lovers and often chosen by hire boat companies. A wide open deck, often with all-round seating, means everyone can be sociable. The engine once again is under the deck boards, which means you'll be doing maintenance in the rain. Engine controls are usually on a standalone pod to the left of the stern. Here's another cruiser example. No seating or anything to stop you falling off here. Next up, love them or loathe them, you will see plenty of these pram hoods, so named for obvious reasons. They tend to cover the back of semi-trads, but I have seen one for a trad, though that is unusual. They give you a bit of a sun trap, which you can use as a conservatory or clothes drying area when moored. What about on the front? Many, like this one, have an open well deck. Then at the other extreme is something like this, practically another entire room, and again a real sun trap, so you can stay out until late at night but still keep warm. And notice this one's mounted higher than the roof of the boat, so you get a little extra standing space there too. This was a custom job, but it shows the kind of thing you can do if you want. Some take it to the extreme conclusion and have the cabin built entirely over what would normally be the well deck. This gives you the maximum interior living space, but at the expense of a semi-outdoor sitting area. And you also lose the bow doors, so you'll go in through the stern or the side doors instead. Those side doors typically having a hatch above them. I'm rather envious of this one's gas-powered strut arrangement to make lifting a cinch. These front cabins can make excellent saloon areas or bedrooms with lots of light and a terrific view out the front. The opposite would be this, a tug deck, a traditionally styled flat deck onto which cargo might once have been loaded, but now tends to hold plants and deck chairs, and if you're unlucky, drunken passers-by, depending on where and when you moor. Underneath, inside, you'll often find a full-width double bed, but you have to crawl into it, so it's not for everyone. Incidentally, look at the lovely classic rivet detailing on this boat, rather than the smooth welded sides you tend to get on most modern craft. And speaking of classics, here's a boat that looks every bit like a traditional working craft. That canvas cover, which once would have kept the coal dry, in fact wrapped over a modern shell with living accommodation inside. In years gone by, the skipper and his entire family would have lived in just the back cabin, the rest of the boat carrying cargo. Tap the sides now and you'll find it's solid, so you get the appearance of a working boat with the lack of interior space that suggests, but all mod cons inside nonetheless. And another unusual take on the canal boat is this narrowboat-sized Dutch barge, complete with large prow and raised edges round the gunnels, with flat, not sloped cabin sides. Plus there's the substantial wheelhouse, which you correctly might assume could give trouble going through some of the canal tunnels and bridges, but fear not, it's all hinged and can be lowered with a bit of effort should the need arise. Let's talk roofs now, and if space is limited inside, which it is, narrowboaters often make use of shallow square wooden boxes with canvas tops to store miscellaneous stuff. Sometimes a car roof box can be used instead. You'll often see solar panels on the roof too, of course, for off-grid power generation without having to run the engine. Finally, let's talk names. Narrowboats get all sorts of monikers, and frequently these are puns and plays on words. Envious, anyone? Sound advice from this boat. A nice watery pun here. Clearly some history best not asked about on this one. And apparently this stands for Do I Look Like I Give a Flip? Or your own choice of F word.
Clearly I could carry on talking about the boats pretty much ad infinitum, and we haven't even gone inside yet. But for every vlog there has to come a point where I stop, and for this one, this is it. I hope it was interesting. If you've got any comments, questions or observations, do drop them in the comments box below and I'll do my best to answer. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.
I'll leave you with just a couple of shots of marina life, gazing out on which make every day on board an absolute treat. When all's said and done though, this is what narrowboating is really about, not sitting on the mooring, but cruising at 3 miles an hour on a beautiful day. Cheerio.